So Tom, thanks for that. And firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Tom and Tara and Isa for all the work that they've done here, for the excellent facilitation. An awful lot of work has obviously gone onto the setup here and trying to set the atmosphere for a bit of collaboration and hopefully some transformation. So I'm Laura Widger, the Head of Technology Enhanced Learning in WIT. And I'd like to thank Tom for putting us between lunch, which I know you'll be all keen for. In WIT, we had 6 champions, and we have a selection of our champions that have attended here today to present in some of their ongoing work. So what I'm going to do is just briefly talk through the 4 that are not here, or actually on Claire. I'm going to briefly talk through Claire for her as well. And then I'm going to hand over to Kate and Anya to talk in more detail about their projects. So Kathleen from the Department of Science face a challenge with students in Chem and Life Sciences requiring quite strong analytical skills in order for all elements of their work, and sometimes a conflict where the amount of time being spent with IT has been reduced from the curriculum. So I wanted to refocus on how they're approaching that. And Kathleen is developing a suite of digital resources for blended learning, focused on demonstrating data analytics and graphing plotting skills in MXL that the students really need in their analysing laboratory research data. Claire and Terry from the library in WIT are working on creating dynamic, interactive and engaging reusable learning resources to support international students' information and research skills. They identified that an awful lot of their ongoing work is currently delivered in the kind of conventional mode. And international students face challenges when they come to the Irish context in terms of their learning needs and issues. So by focusing on developing these resources, they hope that they'll also transfer into the rest of the curriculum. Frank is our very own economic rock star in WIT. He's quite developed in terms of his current use of podcasting to support his delivery of economics. In his project, he's focusing on the use of video. I think you'll probably get some tips from Shane and what he was talking about, in terms of moving beyond the podcasting to take video to supplement traditional delivery in terms of his economics curriculum. Siobhan is a lecturer in the School of Science and Computing, and Siobhan focuses on, part of her specialty is her work with first-year programming students. And she wanted to be able to capture elements of live lectures and produce self-directed tutorials. The challenge for Siobhan is that she would use quite a range of software in terms of she's doing live demonstrations of various software applications, Java-based or other, but also wants to be able to record it, jump easily in and out of PowerPoints or other applications to supplement the delivery of the practical-esque live element to the lectures. So we gave Siobhan a Surface Pro, and she's been amazing in terms of her use of it and understanding the challenges that they face with modern technology within quite a traditional lecturing environment. Some of the feedback from the students that they loved the way she could annotate the slides, made it clear and others agreed. Issues with projection, as I said, issues with our traditional environment. And then also issues with the students in terms of some of the comments. Obviously, Siobhan had made them aware that they're being recorded, but they were probably asleep for the first part of that. And they commented about, they wouldn't have asked questions if they knew they were being recorded. So Siobhan is doing some further research into just their concerns about participation and engagement if their sessions are being recorded live. I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Kate Madden from our Department of Nursing in WIT. She's going to talk about nursing students' perceptions of and attitudes towards online peer and self-assessment.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the last 3 years, I've been working with our students in helping them to develop their peer review skills. And this year I wanted to push out the boundaries a little bit more and try to understand their attitudes and perceptions towards online peer and self-assessment before and after participating in peer assessment process. In terms of the context, the program that I'm working with is Bachelor of Science in General Nursing. It's a full-time 4-year undergraduate program at level 8. So in the form of a blended learning component, I was introducing an e-assessment. So students were required to evaluate 3 of their peers' assignments and provide feedback to them based on a marking rubric that they were co-designing with myself. And they then had to conduct a self-assessment after marking their peers' work. The workshop module in Moodle facilitated the peer assessment, and it's a tremendous module through 5 phases, quite simple phases. It facilitates the logistics of doing online peer and self-assessment in a very timely and efficient manner. For the students, there's essentially 3 phases for them. They have to complete their assignment and submit their assignment into Moodle, into the workshop. Then they engage in the evaluation phase, where they evaluate the 3 of their peers' work, and then they conduct their self-assessment. Then I will basically close the module. Once I close the module, the student receives their grades and their feedbacks immediately. And they receive feedback and grades in a much more timely fashion than if I was actually giving them feedback myself. In order to understand their attitudes, then I was asking them to complete an online questionnaire before. I wanted to look at what were their expectations in relation to this, and then I was asking them also to complete a post-test online questionnaire. In terms of how it impacted on my teaching practice, certainly it very much engages students in constructing their own learning and adopting new roles, both in designing the assessment criterion and examining their peers. It also helps to develop students' peer review skills, which is a very essential skill for nursing students to have in maintaining a culture of safety in healthcare. And it was interesting to hear Emer this morning talking about, how she was using technology as well to enhance patient safety. Because our nursing students very much require that skill set, to be able to go out in nursing practice and to be able to, say, monitor their colleagues and to be very aware of the situation if things are going wrong. In terms of how it impacted on a students' learning, students very much felt that it empowered their learning and found it beneficial. They had very much high expectations of the peer assessment before they started and embarked on the process. After completing the process, they continued to have very positive attitudes to it. Even though there was a marginal decline, their attitudes were very positive. They had positive attitudes to their peers' competence to conduct the peer assessment. They found it very helpful to be able to read their peers' work and learn from their peers. They found students' feedback very helpful, very constructive, and they actually found them that they were fair as well. They did find that they were developing key skills for their future professional roles in nursing practice. They found it a very responsible task and would like perhaps as a lecturer be involved in there with them, because students were solely doing this as a 40% component of a module, but they missed the lecturer feedback and lecturer marks as well. In terms of a future project, we have a link with the University of Maribor in Slovenia, and we have a link with the Empire State College in New York, and we're currently working with them at the moment to develop a collaborative project where we'll look at feedback across the international boundaries. Thanks very much.
Okay, anyway, thank you very much. As I said, my background is in second language learning, teaching, and when I was invited to develop an interface for Moodle users in WIT, I went back to what I knew best, which were second language acquisition theories, and realized that these theories could inform learning in general online. For example, when you have language learners, your aim as a teacher is to transform them into language users. Now, on the online world, we're talking about users all the time, and I've a huge problem with that word because of all the negative connotations associated with users, consumerism, addictive behavior. So I thought, well, maybe I should focus on how to transform the user into a learner. Another concept we have in second language acquisition theories is we make the difference between acquisition and learning. Acquisition is what happens outside the classroom informally, meeting native speakers and so on. And then learning is what happens in the classroom. And that is what happens with people in general online. There's a lot of informal learning happening and some formal learning happening. So how do you reconcile all of this? Interface is key to learning, and more work is done on interface. And for that interface, I wanted this dialogical approach to happen in formal lecture lab, or in our fragmented educational environment, atomized at this stage, relationships between different modules. And 2 cards seem to work best for me. But I asked myself, why am I choosing 2 cards? The process was intuitive. So I went back to the original, the beginnings of tools, and realized that symmetry was key to producing an efficient, reliable tool, and bilateral symmetry and 3D congruent symmetry. So I started looking at my module in this way. The other thing I realized is that with symmetry, you can have something which is really important online as well, and it's multimodality. So that's the same tool a few years later. So with the idea of symmetry and multimodality, I started to build my 2 cards. So this would represent a unit on module, roughly 3 weeks' work for the students. And you can see that I use a lot of pictures. Won't go into the why, but there are lots of reasons why. A brief introduction, and then what you have there are 3 key words. It's in French. I teach French. Mots-clés. 3 key words, and the key words do not relate to important topics in the module. What they are, literally, they are keywords. They open up onto another world. So no more than 3 links per card. And then a few reflection questions, which can also bring the students beyond the module itself. So if students click on one keyword, they are introduced to a multimodal experience. So in the first tile or card, what you have is a customized TED-Ed video, which anybody can do. Any video you have, just go on TED-Ed. You customize it really easily. And then some of the material from the video, I photographed the text. I took a screenshot and then uploaded it onto Jigsaw Planet. And there, students have to use eye-hand coordination to reconstitute the text. But you can do this with pictures, with graphs, with anything, as long as it is a photograph. And then at the very end, in number 6, this is a task for students. They can develop materials for their peers using Puzzle Maker. Another way of using the keywords, Moodle is a huge repository, and rather than having it as a dormant bank account where people throw things in, I wanted a high-yield bank account. And in language learning, studies show that where most mistakes are made is actually where most learning happens. And I wanted to record the mistakes. So I created a class diary called My Beautiful Mistakes, and students recorded their mistakes. And you can see huge variations between the way students record their mistakes, but this one, color was used, X wrong, green tick right, and then an explanation of where the mistake came from and how to correct it. The second one simply shows the use of the bold type to highlight the important word to focus on. Sometimes I use 3 cards, but rarely. I use them when I need to make categories. So I have 3 categories here: dictionaries, grammar, and the press. Note that I left all the URLs visible to the students precisely to show them that they were using digital tools. So I was working on their perception. 3 cards can also be used for sub-themes, so it's quite good for categories. Impact on teaching. I found I had to reconceptualize my module completely. And colleagues who have used this approach have reinterpreted the 2 cards and are reconceptualizing their module. It's a lot of work, but it's stable. It's like, you know, the very first tools, the hand axe. It's efficient, it's reliable, and really it's about putting some analog thinking into our digital teaching because of this atomized environment that we work in. So thank you very much.
Yeah, my name is Kate Madden. I'm a nursing lecturer in the Department of Nursing and Healthcare at Waterford Institute of Technology.
And what TEL tool has your course benefited from the most?
In the last semester I've been using peer and self-assessment with our nursing students. The workshop module in Moodle is a fantastic tool to use because it makes peer and self-assessment very accessible and efficient to use. Students greatly benefit from it because they get to self-assess each other and read each other's assignments, and they actually really like that, to see each other's work.
And what resource do you think is most helpful to students?
I think any digital resource where students can actually interact and they can actually read each other's work, they like that. And I think any tool that makes lecturers' work available to students, so for example, reusable learning objects, for example, they like to be able to go back and see these resources at their own time when they need them most.
And what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone starting out with TEL?
I think anyone starting out with TEL, one piece of advice I would give to them is don't be intimidated by it, because particularly if you're of my age group, sometimes we're not digital natives like our students are. But you know, from my experience in using technology, I found that it really enhances your learning. And if you can go to the Centre for Technology Enhanced Learning, they're a great resource to actually help you as well.
My name is Claire and I work in the library in WIT, and I'm assistant librarian there, and I would be responsible for coordinating our learning support programme. So that would involve giving learning support to all students in the college and in addition to international students, which is what our project focused on.
Great. What TEL tool has your course benefited from the most?
We used Articulate Storyline 2 to create reusable learning objects for international students, and the idea behind that was that, well, we focused on plagiarism and referencing, so that students who might come to the tutorial could use it as a backup for what they saw earlier, or else if they'd never been, that it could be a standalone learning tool. And we have found that, you know, we haven't properly evaluated it yet, but it's certainly something that, based on literature that we've looked at, we're hoping that it would be successful when we do use it with our students.
Great. What resource do you think is most helpful to students?
I suppose Articulate Storyline 2 is what we used. So, I mean, the students who have used it before, some of them who we have trialled it with, they have found that they can go back and they can watch it. Some international students would find that, you know, they might be nervous or they might be embarrassed to raise their hand and ask a question in a tutorial. So it's much easier for them if they can go back and re-watch something as many times as they need, as English isn't their first language. So we found that works well with them.
Great. And what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone starting out with TEL?
The one piece of advice I would give would be to certainly build in enough time into your project plan to allow yourself to get to grips with the technology, because even though I had done a few trial versions of the technology that we used, I still found that it had been a while ago since I'd done that, and I did need to relearn certain things, and also there were new features in it. So I think I was caught a little bit that way, and I would advise anyone who's going to use Articulate Storyline 2 just to remember that you'll start slow at the start, but don't panic. Once you get to grips with it, things will speed up and you'll be away with it then, and certainly it's been a brilliant resource to have.
Okay, well, my name is Anya Furlong, and I work in Waterford Institute of Technology.
Great. What TEL tool has your course benefited from the most?
Well, I think one of the most important principles I work with is multimodality in the interface of the 2-card objects which I've developed on Moodle. And so for multimodality, I use Blend Space, which is a really useful, simple tool to use, which is freely available on the web. You don't even have to download it.
What resource do you think is most helpful to students?
Moodle is a fantastic resource. One of the things my students do is they actually record their mistakes in Moodle in a learner diary, so it creates awareness of the mistakes they make, and they can also see one another's mistakes and learn from that.
Finally, what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone starting out with TEL?
I think what would be very important is to make sure that whatever you develop is not developed on its own, that it has to be connected to other things you do and to other things other people do. So this connection, I think, is very important.